and we are basically the sponsors of the webinar series. Today we have Dr. Andrew Willix, and we will be focusing on Jus Mundi, which is a very dynamic database that I also am going to learn about since my background is in health information. Dr. Willix is an international law and trade policy specialist. He's worked in a wide range of national, European Union, and international business contexts, including for the International Chamber of Congress in Paris and the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Canberra. He's originally admitted as a lawyer of the Supreme Court of New South Wales, where he practiced as a litigation solicitor. He's obtained an interdisciplinary PhD in international law and political science at the Center for European Studies at the Australian National University. Recently, he's worked with the International Chamber of Commerce in Paris, where he's now located. 2019 became Associate Director of the ICC in Australia, and then joined Jus Mundi in Paris as Director of International Trade and Partnership in 2020. So we are getting a lesson from a man who is knowledgeable of the discipline and will hopefully relate it in ways that will help all of you use this within your institutions. So I turn it over to Andrew at this point, and I will be a student.
Thank you very much, Lenny, and thank you for everybody who has logged in and who is listening. It's great to be with you all today, but also with Lenny as well. I note that Lenny has over 20 years education experience, and that's what this is really all about, is about providing people with resources, people who perhaps wouldn't normally be able to access these resources. And that is one of the reasons why I joined Jus Mundi. Jus Mundi is a database of international law and arbitration materials with over 70,000 materials in it. Law firms pay for access. Universities like Harvard and Cambridge, many universities around the world pay for access to this. And one of the partnerships I wanted to do for the longest time was with Research for Life, to make sure that we leave no researcher behind. So the idea of Jus Mundi in Latin, of course, is world law, so Jus Mundi, and we are delighted to be providing people with access to Jus Mundi through Research for Life. And the kind of access you have is something that I will do as I share my screen, and I will take you across how to use those materials. But very quickly, just a little primer on what international arbitration is and why Jus Mundi focuses on that. So essentially, you are used to, in your countries, you are used to having a national court, perhaps. Perhaps you have a local court that deals with local legal issues, and perhaps you have maybe a regional court that deals with regional issues. But in relation to your country that you're in, you will be used to the idea of court. Most people in the public domain when they think of courts, they think of television shows, they think of crime shows, so criminal law, and criminal people ending up in court, being tried for crimes, and perhaps convicted and then becoming part of the system. So that's how we like to approach in popular culture in our minds, the courtroom in our minds. But what we need to remember is that there is a whole range of other courts, and they're really, I call them private courts. They're private courts that exist around the world to deal with problems between commercial entities that cross borders. So I'm Australian, but I work in Paris. Let's say there's a French company that is doing some business with an Australian company, and they have done a contract let's say for the sale of some Australian grain to France, and maybe something goes wrong with that contract, which court do they go to? Do they go to the Australian court or do they go to the French courts? What do they do? Most companies nowadays, when they have a contract between each other, they will actually agree to do what's called arbitration. So they will form a private court. They will each decide on a neutral judge. And then they will have a dispute with a tribunal, what's called an arbitral tribunal. And that dispute will go according to rules. And rules of that dispute can be dependent upon the court that they choose to have the debate in. So keep in mind, these courts they're not national courts, but they still exist as courts where companies can get their disputes resolved either in private or in public if they choose. It's wonderful to see so many people on the chat, and thank you very much for joining us as well from all those countries. I think I saw Bhutan, Tanzania, Kenya, somewhere in there, so that's great. So what do we do when we're used to being able to have access to the courts and the court materials locally? For example, in Kenya, there's domestic courts and you can go to the courthouse and you can get judgments. So you can understand what the law is and what the interpretation of the law is. But what do you do when you are interested in what a company in Kenya might be able to do if they have a dispute with a company in France? What do? There's no court that you can go to say, I want to see these kind of judgments. And that's where Jus Mundi really specializes. This is really the domain of a type of informal international law called international arbitration. And in international arbitration, you should think of a court in your minds. So what I will do, and there's Nepalese, that's wonderful. What I will do is I will share my screen and I will take you through what Jus Mundi does and what it looks like as a platform. I will take you through the version of Jus Mundi that you have, which is called Jus Mundi Academic Research. So it's really focused on that. So hopefully I can share my screen. You can see my desktop there. I'm just going to take you through to Safari. And please let me know if you can't see this screen. So I'm just going to go to jusmundi.com. So obviously under Research for Life, you already have the ability to go through Research for Life's access features. So you start with Research for Life's login, which I won't do here because I'm outside that system. And you'll see that I'm already logged in as myself. You'll be logged in under Research for Life. So always go through Research for Life as your conduit to go through, and then you will automatically have access. You don't need a login or a password. You just need to use Research for Life and the login you have with Research for Life. And of course, if you don't know how to log in to Research for Life, best to contact your Research for Life partners or the administrators of Research for Life. But what you see on the screen in front of you here is very simple. So this is what it will look like when you're logged in through Research for Life, and you won't see a name in the top corner, but that's my name. Instead, you will just see Research for Life, and you'll be able to see the screen. So what do we start off with? We start off with a search engine, and we're all so used to typing into Google very quickly. You know, we're used to typing into Google quickly and we don't really look at what we're typing into. But I want to bring your attention to these little buttons here, because this is very interesting. So first we have treaties. Those are like international contracts between nations. So between Kenya and other countries in Africa, between France and Australia, between many, many countries. We have treaties. We also have cases. And cases can be about matters that were raised under treaties, or they can be matters that were raised under the rules of arbitration, which I'll take you through here. So we have cases, So we've got a lot of cases, and I'll show you that in a minute. We also have rules. Rules is shorthand on Jus Mundi for rules of arbitration. So you know how I talked about those private international law courts? Those private courts all have rules. So if you are two companies, or you're a small company based in Kenya, and you want to try and recover against a company, say in France, and you have a contract with that company, and it says that you will arbitrate, you can actually use these rules to determine what rules apply to your dispute. And then we have publications, which is like online books, online research articles, that sort of thing. And I'll take you through each one of these in a moment, and I'll take you through why this is special on Jus Mundi. Now, I'm not going to enter in any search term here, because what we can actually do is we can actually start with a deductive search. So when I say a deductive search, it means we start with the whole pile of all the materials on Jus Mundi, and then we work our way backwards in. Okay, so I'm going to click on Treaties just there. So you see what I did? And you can see Treaties is switched on. Now I'm going to turn the Cases button on. I'm going to turn the Rules button on, and then Publications on. Now this is what is special about Jus Mundi. Okay, you can see how many treaties we've got. We've got 4,691 treaties in the Jus Mundi database. We've got 72,000 cases in international law and arbitration in the database. We've got 779 sets of rules from those private courts I mentioned. And then we've got over 4,800 publications and articles and other materials that you have access to through the Research for Life a partnership that we have. And now, this is why Jus Mundi is very special. We link 4,600 treaties with the 72,000 cases. What do I mean? I mean that any time a case mentions one of these treaties, even a small part of the treaty, then it means that that is hot linked across to the treaty. When a treaty might mention a case, which is very rare, the treaty is hot linked across the case. Now, if a case also mentions a rule of arbitration, then that will be hot linked across as well. So each of these two, so that's over 75,000 materials, are linked to the rules. All of these three are then linked across to the publications. And I'll show you how that works in a moment. But all these materials, and this is what's special about what you get through Research for Life for free, is that you get to understand how the cases fit into the treaties, how the cases fit into the rules. And when you're reading publications, you can find out how cases, rules, and treaties fit into the publications. And I'm going to show you that now. Let's start with treaties. So I'm just going to click on, let's not worry about these. I've got a little video screen that I have to move around my screen. Let's not worry about these filters. I'll show you those in a moment when we come to cases. Let's just focus on starting with all the treaties that we have. So I just clicked the treaties button. So you notice all these are grayed out. Now we're only looking at treaties. Now this looks very dramatic and confusing. We've got dozens and dozens and dozens of pages of treaties. Now, the way we can then start to reduce our search, to deduct the search, is we can say that maybe we want, what kind of treaty is it? We want maybe just the model agreements, which might mean that an institution has suggested that there's a model way of doing, say, a bilateral investment treaty. So here you can see first result is an African Arbitration Academy model bilateral investment treaty for African states. Now, if you are working for a government and someone says, do some investigation about bilateral investment treaties, of which there are many, you can find it on Jus Mundi. We're going to click across into it, and there it is. So there you are. So all of this material is available for free under Jus Mundi. Now let's say you want to have a look at the model bilateral investment treaty that the United States uses. Again, it's right here, which is wonderful. So what I want to do is, I already know the name of a very famous treaty that I want to show you, and I'll show you this now. So it's the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. Many of you watching would be very familiar with this. Some of you won't be, but that's okay. So this very old treaty governs the way that other treaties are actually interpreted. So it's almost like a gateway to understanding how international law, particularly treaty law, is implemented, and how your domestic courts will interpret the implementation. Now, you notice that what has come up is you can get it in French, in Russian, in Spanish, many languages, and English. Here, you notice that you get a table of contents down one side. And let's just have a scroll down. Again, it's highlighted these because that's my search terms. So we just ignore the fact that it's highlighted. And I want to bring your attention to this wonderful little button here. I'm going to click on that in a minute, but I'm not going to ruin it yet. I'm not going to ruin the surprise. So if we scroll down, you see part one, the introduction, you see these blue lines. You think to yourself, what are these blue lines here on the side? Let's scroll down to a very famous article, which is about the interpretation. And here we go. So let's go Article 31. Now, if we take the mouse and we click on Article 31, what we discover is that there's 855. You remember that button for cases? So just to show you again, the button for treaties, back on our search results, button for treaties is blue with that little icon. But then when we go to Article 31, okay, we go to Article 31 and we click on that article, and there is the little case button. Now, that's 855 cases that refer to just this article. Now, imagine for a minute that you're an employer, or perhaps you're trying to research an issue that you think might appear in a treaty that you need to look up, and you want to find cases that deal with that particular provision of that treaty. You would be able to go and click on the article and then click on this button, and I'll do that now. And this is what is special about Jus Mundi. So this is the version of Jus Mundi you have access to, so Jus Mundi Academic Research. And what we have is we actually have every recent case in international arbitration, in international disputes, multiple languages. We have every single case that mentions this particular article, 855 of them. Now, we're going to go like following a rabbit down a hole. We're going to go and we're going to click on this particular case. And we see that the High Court of Australia is, and I didn't know this, I didn't see this before because it's very recent. Really, it's less than a month old. The High Court of Australia has made an order in relation to Article 31 of that convention that we had before. I'm going to click on this 42 here, which is going to take us to that pinpoint. Okay, it's going to take us right to that pinpoint. So here is how the Australian High Court, which is the highest court in Australia, and indeed there will be the Supreme Court in Kenya, there'll be the top courts in each country. Your courts will interpret these treaties in a certain way. And there you are. So there's a good statement of the law in Australia relating to treaty interpretation by the High Court of Australia. And this, I can tell you as an Australian lawyer, I'm now an international lawyer, but as an Australian lawyer originally, it's very rare to see the High Court setting out exactly what it understands the meaning of the Vienna Convention to be. But all that is nerdy law stuff. And what are we really dealing with here? Well, we're dealing with an example of how these documents are interlinked. Now we're going to go even further down the rabbit hole. And again, I'm dealing with a document here that I haven't seen. And I'm very happy to do this legal research live with you because it's more interesting for me that way as well as you. Now, what do we notice? So remember, how did we get here? Let's backtrack a little bit. Remember, we looked up the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, maybe because your boss or your NGO or your personal interest, maybe you looked up a treaty and you said, okay, this is on Jus Mundi. I've got the article here, clicked on the article, what cases are referring to this article? We then see all those cases. Then I've clicked on the most recent one, just as an example, and we found that it's High Court of Australia, and you see that there is a dispute. Now, what we can see about this dispute is that it went into one of these. Well, it's a public court, this one, but it's actually it's an entity related to the United Nations. Well, it's related to the World Bank actually, which sits somewhere in the vicinity of the UN, as you all know, probably. So essentially we have arbitration rules. Remember I told you that there were special rules, private rules that go for these disputes. There's the rules of arbitration. There's the center. Where did the claimant come from? Luxembourg. Who was the respondent? It was Spain. Remember how I said that these companies have these disputes? You know, it might be Kenya and maybe maybe Australia, Kenya, Australia. We don't know. But for the purposes of example, this is a very good one. So there was an investor-state dispute settlement. And what that means is that somebody from Luxembourg, they went and they raised a claim against Spain in relation to a renewable electric solar issue. This was decided in favour of the investor against Spain, it looks like, and that's not my interpretation, or that's not legal advice. That's actually just my interpretation of what's going on, just on the basis that we've got. So then, what is it that's special about what Jus Mundi has pulled together? You remember those 72,000 documents in international law and arbitration? Well, here's some of them. What we can do is we can actually trace everything that happened. And this is just a random example. This shows you, right? So you've got memorandums of support. You've got so we go from most recent upwards to least recent. We can see what happened. 2015, this started. 2019, there was a judgment in Australia. And look at this. If we let's have a look at what the US District Court did in relation to this dispute. There it is. So we can actually find out, and there's the name of the company there, Mazda Solar and Wind. Okay, we can actually go right through and find out each detail about what happened, and finishing, of course, with the most recent order of the High Court of Australia in relation to this matter. Okay, so that's just a small example. I'm going to close these screens now, and I'm going to come back to that more comfortable setting that we're used to, which is just a blank screen. So we've chased the rabbit down the hole a little bit, and you can see that whatever you're looking for, you can definitely find it. Now let's go to cases. So remember, there were 4,500 treaties. Let's go to those cases. Now we start with everything. Remember, I haven't searched for keyword. I just clicked on that button, and we've literally got all 72,000 cases there. And it looks like a bit of a mess. You know, it really looks like a mess. In fact, you know, sitting here and thinking about how it must look to you, this looks overwhelming. Okay, so we've got decisions from 1927, you know, and then we've got decision 1924. If we sort by least recent, which is always very exciting. We've got a declaration of Article 5 of the Treaty of 1794 between the US and Great Britain regarding, I think, probably the boundaries and borders of what had happened in relation to the disputes between Britain and the US. I mean, that's the age. I'm going to click on it because it's interesting, and then I'm going to show you these filters here. But just for the sake of interest, I mean, this is really fascinating. So these are very, very old statements about, say, international disputes in international law, and we know that they are essentially ad hoc arbitration, the first earliest signs of arbitration. Okay, so coming back, let's go to the most recent, and we've got a judgment of the High Court of England and Wales from yesterday. I'm going to click on that, and there you have it. You actually have that hasn't been structured yet, so you get the PDF document, but you can still read it. So let me show you the filters, which is why I'm on the screen. Over here, these filters take all those 79,000 cases and we start to reduce them. Okay. Now, I told you about arbitration and what international arbitration is in a very loose overview. Some of you on the call will be extremely educated in this. Others, it may be the first time you've heard about it. So that's okay. We're going to assume that everybody's about the same. So what type of case in arbitration are we doing? Let's say it is commercial arbitration. So that's two companies, maybe one in Australia, maybe one in India, and they are involved in a dispute that requires arbitration because of the contract between them tells them to go to arbitration, not to a domestic court. So we're going to click on that filter. Okay, so we're going to see that whir away for a little bit. There we go. So we've restricted the search to just commercial arbitration. And we can see now there's not 70,000 documents, there's now 39,000 documents left. Let's go further down. Let's try, let's have a look at the courts that are involved in these commercial arbitration matters. Now that's a lot of courts. That is a lot of courts, okay? We've got hundreds and hundreds of them in Jus Mundi, and for obvious reasons. Now, let's say that let's go very narrow. Let's say that we've heard of the Vietnam International Arbitration Centre, which is quite a famous centre. It's a centre for resolving disputes, and any commercial entity can go to VIAC and get a dispute resolved. I'm going to click that. Suddenly, we're really, really narrowing down on what we've got in relation to this particular tribunal or court. Okay. Now, very interesting because we've got a small amount of results here, and I'm also just having a look while I just pause briefly. Any African continent? Yes, I'm going to answer your questions very quickly that I can see in the Q&A. We have any African content? Yes, we do, and I'll show you that. Thanks, but Treaties is asking for sign-in and prompting for a trial instead of full access. That's from a person called Rodney. Rodney, you need to contact Research for Life so that you can get access in that way, and they will help you get access to the free access through Jus Mundi for Life. And a friend has also asked, so a third person has also asked, can we download the treaties? The answer to that is yes. Okay, so I've addressed those little questions there. There we go. And I think Research for Life is also answering those questions there. Excellent. And in terms of the questions to me, I've just answered those. I will let the Research for Life trainers mark those as answered, just so that we get that on the recording as well. Now, coming back for all of you to understand what we're doing here in front of us, we've got those search results. So let's just recap what we just did. Type of case was commercial arbitration. So two companies from different countries, they want to resolve a disagreement and they have to go to arbitration. They've gone to Vietnam and Vietnam. And what do we have here? When we see an award here, what an award is, another word for award is a judgment. So it's kind of like when the judge in a domestic court says, look, I make this finding. This is the final finding and it's binding on the parties. An award is a finding that is binding on the two entities. In this circumstance, these two companies, or perhaps individuals, we're going to find out. I'm going to click on that. These two companies have come up with an issue. Now, very interesting. Sometimes when the text is confidential, we don't get the text. And it is right that a confidential text we will not publish. We never publish anything that is confidential. Otherwise, of course, we would get sued and it's not good. So we don't even receive any confidential data. What we do know is that we know that a matter was heard between these parties and it was related to construction, for example. Remember those rules, the Vietnam rules of arbitration? I'll show you those soon. Okay, so I just want to show you really, this is all for the purpose of showing you those filters. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel one aspect of the filter and I'm going to go to a much more prolific institution. It doesn't, no institution is better than the other. I'm just clicking on it because it's got the most examples. And it's where I used to work actually, in Paris. So the International Chamber of Commerce has an arbitration court in it. And it is a marvelous court, like all of the courts, the arbitration courts around the world. So I'm just going to click on that because I know that, that we get a lot more research results out of that, and for the purpose of making the demonstration of how to do this. So we've said it's commercial arbitration between two commercial entities. It's the International Chamber of Commerce, the Court of Arbitration there. Okay. We're also going to say what type of document. And what do I mean when I say type of document? Now look at this. So maybe there's a national decision in relation to commercial arbitration. I'm not going to click on that because what we want to look at is those awards. Those awards, those final awards, really the final judgment, if you like. It's another way of saying that. So I click on that. You'll notice that these are locked. These are really only for law firms and require an individual subscription for a law firm. So that's not provided for Research for Life because it's really tools that only lawyers would use rather than just researchers. So here we have, let's pick an award that is full and that looks like a very nice commercial award. Let's Go Aero, which sounds like a company name, and Falcon, which is clearly a company name. This is from the end of last year. Let's click it. Let's have a look. So what do we find? We find all sorts of information about who was in dispute over what. We see that the arbitrations, what they call the seat of arbitration, which is really where was it arbitrated? This is located in Denver. Okay? So that's the city where the arbitration was held. They used the arbitration rules from 2017. It was an ICC, International Chamber of Commerce case. The respondent, so the person making the claim was in the US, the respondent was China, was Chinese, wasn't the government. So it's not the two governments, it's just the place where the companies are from. And you can see it's about manufacturing and automotive. Okay. Now, what's very interesting here is we can see who were the judges, the arbitrators, we call them. They were these three people. We see all the documents related to the case. Okay. And then we see the final award here, or the final judgment of that arbitration. And of course, it's quite a short one, which is quite nice to show you. So we see the damages. Okay. Now, please keep in mind, I haven't even typed in any keywords here. So you can just imagine how powerful it starts to get when I start doing this. Okay, so I'm going to wrap them in inverted commas so that we're searching for this phrase. I'm pretty sure we're all used to that with Google. Now, here's our search results for dual nationality. Okay. Now, what you will see turns up, look at this, different language, but we have still tagged the same concept in this, see how it's blue, in this treaty. I'm going to get rid of the treaties, I'm going to get rid of the rules, I'm going to get rid of the publications. Okay. Oh. I'm toggling off. I need to toggle on. There we go. Toggled on. So I had to click those until they toggled on. We're just going to go down to the cases. I want to sort by recent. I'm very interested in something that happened just a bit over a month ago in relation to dual nationality. And I'm very interested in this when it comes to let's find a very interesting one. These are all boring. We need something very random. Yeah, Dubai. That will do. There we go. That's good. Dubai is a very interesting place. Wonderful, wonderful city. And we have a great example of a situation that dealt with dual nationality, the topic of dual nationality, in between these two companies using ICC rules, seat of arbitration in Dubai, and it was involving machinery and equipment, as many of these things are. And if I just do a little, there you go. So the address is dual national United States. So maybe that's the only time it's mentioned. But if we want to know where this term is mentioned, you see, dual national is dual national. Now, if we want it, let's go higher on this list. Let's say we want things that are heard in Washington, DC. And then I'll run that search again because it's getting confused with my multiple clicks. So I want to reduce just to the cases. And then I want to say, let's just say seat of arbitration. Let's pick the most populous one, which is Washington, DC. Been done a lot. The Nations Energy in Panama. Now, this concept appears in 3 different, no, more than that, 10 different pinpoints. And you can see the search engine is pulling out where that concept appears. Here we go again, 7 items. This is in English, so it's going to be a bit more accessible for the purposes of this conversation, but we have results in French as well, in Chinese, in Arabic. It's a multilingual site. So dual nationality as a concept is discussed in these awards, and on you go. So really, the search string that you can use from this point, this very comfortable point that we're looking at here, the search string that you can use is very, very powerful when you combine it with these filters over here. Okay, so it really depends on what you're looking for. Of course, these filters aren't available because they're only for lawyers. Lawyers are really the only ones who use these filters, but for a researcher, for educational purposes, for research for life, for example, these are very good. I'm now going to take you across to the rule. So remember, so we started out here. I'm going to do this again. It's always worth repeating. So treaties case, we've had a look at rules. Okay. Now, these are those rules of those private institutions. And I'm just having a look at the questions. Jamal asks us, how can anyone contribute to this database? So you can contribute to this database if you are a lawyer and you specialize in international arbitration. Certainly, one of the ways that you can contribute is by contacting us. You'll see on that website. I'll just show you. It's worthwhile answering these questions as we go along, because then we don't run out of time at the end. I really want you guys to have a good interactive session here. You can certainly contact us here, and you see this little button here in the bottom right-hand side of my screen. I want to try and lift up the window, but I cannot lift it up any further. There you go. this is a little chat. So if you are a lawyer and you would like to contribute to Jus Mundi, so it's really for lawyers to contribute, then you click that button, and my goodness, my colleagues are going to say, these are my colleagues, they are going to say, what do you want in a minute. So I'll try and refresh that screen so we don't harass my colleagues, but there you go. So please use that chat function if you want to contribute. Let me just put this aside. Okay, and we're good there. Rodney's having an answer. That's fine. Okay, where were we? We go back to the rules. We clicked on the rules. Remember the yellow one there? Now, this looks like a mess. 780 rules. How on earth are we going to find out what we want? Well, that's why we use filters. So, type of rules. Maybe I want rules of arbitration. Obviously, that's very important. Maybe I'm looking for, let's say, the NCIA, Nairobi Centre for International Arbitration. Let's have a look. Are they in here? And here we go. If I do Nairobi, let's have a look. I'll be lucky if we can find it in here. Here we go. Quicker. If I can't find them straight away, I will just pick a different one. Here we go. Lasiak. There you go. But let's do Lagos, just because they're here. Okay. All right. Now this is terrific because we can see the Lagos Chamber of Commerce has an international arbitration centre, one of those private courts that I was telling you about. And we can see that they have arbitration rules. Maybe you are looking at a company from Lagos or an issue in Lagos, and you think, well, I wonder if that involves this company and that company, maybe I need to figure out maybe what the Lagos rules say. Okay, and these are the rules that govern the behaviour of the court. Okay, so maybe you need to find something out about that, about the fees, let's say. So we say costs. Want to know how much it costs to run a matter through LASIAC. Okay, so we've got those rules there. The rules are particular for lawyers, but also researchers, and I don't take anything away from that. You'll know it when you see an arbitration rule that you need to look up. And for that reason, I'm going to go across to publications now. Now, this is where it gets very, very interesting. Okay, so notice they're purple. That's the first thing. Okay, now these publications, they're most often about topics that you might have. So let's try that dual nationality. Now, this is a risk that I'm taking because maybe it's not going to turn up, and I haven't tried this before. It was just an idea to try and find it. That is very lucky. That's good. Right. So here we have an article about dual nationality of investor. Now, just to explain something for those who don't know, and it's fine not to know, this is what this is about learning. So there's commercial arbitration, which might be an Australian company and a Kenyan company, and the Kenyan company's recovering costs against the Australian company. Or you might have a Kenyan company is trying to recover against the Australian government. The Kenyan company has invested in Australia. Maybe the Australian government has made a decision, and a decision based on, some legal reason, and maybe there needs to be a recovery for the Kenyan company being compensated for something the Australian government has done that caused the Kenyan company loss, for example. And I can't remember that happening in recent memory in Australia, and I'm Australian, so it's a good example because it's a fictitious one. But if we click on dual nationality of investor, what happens when your Kenyan investor in Australia is both Kenyan and French? Okay, so that's what this is about. Now, Kabir is a fantastic academic out of the University of Columbia in the United States. He's one of the leading lights in international arbitration, in commercial arbitration, investment arbitration, and he's the editor. And we have a fantastic academic who has written this article for us. And this is very useful because these topics are covered almost like, and I think we all know Wikipedia, they're covered like Wikipedia, and we can go through here. So this tells us about what dual nationality means. Watch this. This is why Jus Mundi is so powerful. So it refers to simultaneous possession of two nationalities by the same individual investor or foreign companies, juridical persons. Now that's very nice, that's very interesting, that's great. And I'm doing this for an example because we're going to click on juridical persons, just as an example. Now I've clicked on juridical persons, and what comes up? What have we noticed? What we noticed, and that was an accident. I didn't know that that was going to come up. I do remember editing this article, but juridical persons, another name for that is jurisdiction ratio personae. So I was editor on this, but a very learned lawyer on this particular concept. He wrote this article. I did not write it. I edited it with him, and I didn't know that was going to come up. But what we have is then a description of what this concept is. And if we click on these little footnotes, look at this. We get little book references to where you can find out more. And then you notice something. You remember what I was saying about all these materials being interlinked? Well, here it is. So let's look at footnote 5. This in turn will determine the jurisdiction ratio personae of an investor state arbitral tribunal. Okay. So maybe a private court itself will straddle two countries. And when has that happened? Well, look at this. We have an award, we have a judgment, Venezuela and Venezuela. Look at that. There's the judgment. So we can actually go through and then look at the award that was rendered in that circumstance, all because we're reading about this. And maybe we don't want to read this and we want to just close those and we want to keep reading related wiki notes and so on. And so in this way, we can actually go through the wiki notes. There is another way to look at those. So remember, we're in publications, it's purple. Product, we go up to product. And then wiki notes, which you all have access to. So I'm accessing this in the way that you would. Okay. So we have wiki notes on investment law and arbitration. And you can have your little topics here. Now, this is obviously a big chunk of international arbitration, but it looks very small from here. But when you go through, you follow the bunny down the rabbit hole, you can read about all sorts of issues here, which, for example, everyone would understand confidentiality is an issue when it comes to investor-state dispute settlement. So what is that? That is, let's say a Kenyan firm wants to recover costs against the Australian government, let's say. We might say, well, is this a confidential matter? What do the treaties say about it? Well, there's transparency provisions in the BITs. And what might that look like? Well, what's a transparency provision in the treaty? Remember, interlinked. And on we go. And what I'm demonstrating to you really, there's tons of permutation in all of this. But what I'm demonstrating to you is you can research anything with a level of granularity in relation to international arbitration, both investment and commercial, and international law, international trade law as well, in relation to those. I might just take you through international trade law before I stop for some questions. And that's why I've been addressing those Q&As in that chat there. I want to just take you through, and this will be very relevant for those in African jurisdictions and Southeast Asia particularly. World Trade Organization, the WTO. For non-lawyers, the WTO is best understood as a treaty. It's called the World Trade Organization, but it's actually a big, gigantic pack of treaties. So let's just click on that. Remember, we're in cases. Up here, we're in cases. I haven't entered a search term. So I've restricted it down to the World Trade Organization. Then I want to, and this should interest you, I want to say, well, there's no rules of arbitration because it's not arbitration, it's World Trade Organization dispute. We want to say maybe the seat, no, applicable law, and then the treaty. There we go, applicable treaty. I want something from something pretty obscure, the Trade Facilitation Agreement, which was concluded in 2016. And then, so we're looking at country versus country. Now, we don't want to pick, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I like that. Okay, Japan and Korea. Good friends on the world stage. And what do we have? We have a range of results relating to a dispute under the World Trade Organization between these two countries. And we can read in here. So you can see you can go country against country as well. So look, I'm going to stop there because we've done 54 minutes together, and I've done a lot of talking, and I just want to address any questions or maybe even any questions from my host. I'm going to stop my screen sharing there. And okay, and I see some wonderful comments from our friends, and I might just take a quick dash through those just to be fair to our friends here. So we have Ghana, Dar es Salaam, that's wonderful, that's wonderful. Okay, that's excellent. Excellent, and your trainers from Kenya, that's wonderful. Okay, excellent. It's just so wonderful to read all these comments. I'm quickly flicking through them. Okay, Hungary, greetings to Hungary. Malawi, wonderful. And there's a few people with some issues with internet connection, but that's okay because you can look back over the recording. Okay. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, now I'll look at the question and answer section. And does anyone have any other questions for the Q&A box? So rather than the chat box, the Q&A box. And I'm happy to answer them. And my colleagues, maybe in Research for Life as well, they may wish to interject at this point if we don't have any further questions. But it's certainly a pleasure to talk to all of you. Now, Mercy or Lenny, are you fielding questions or? Thank you very much, Mogus.
I've been fielding questions, and unfortunately, there is a problem with the link. Okay, and I have already reported this to the help desk, and they will check on it. Perhaps they are going through a process of changing things, and this got broken. But we will. I guess we should send out a note when this is fixed. Sorry for the inconvenience. I hope that everyone got a lot of information out of this. It was definitely a new direction for our webinars to have it on this issue. We're calling it a reference source, but it really seems to be a database. I'm not sure why they chose to put in reference sources. I appreciate your time and contribution. And I know that I hope that some people go back and talk with their legal information faculty and encourage them to take a look themselves, because this is a whole new option that we have available through Research for Life. Any other comments? Please put them in chat. Andrew, we appreciate you taking the time. You definitely have the background to take us through the nuances of this tool. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. And just to add my comments, I think Research for Life is exactly the kind of program we want to be involved in because you have such a great reach. You do a great amount of work. And personally, for me, it's an absolute privilege to have this discussion. And with so many fantastic attendees, we have 162 attendees. I can see on the screen there, which is just absolutely wonderful. What a privilege.
Yeah, we got up to 190, I think. But sometimes people just choose to watch the video because of access problems or time constraints. So we will get this information out to all the participants and they can view it that way. Okay, Marsh, any other comments? We appreciate your hour of instructing us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lenny. Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize on that the recording will be shared for all the other participants in the next few days. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks, Lenny, and thank you to all the questions. And thanks to the participants. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.